So maybe you've got 40 or 50 properties that you're looking at. Understanding the development potential of each is overwhelming in terms of the amount of work you've got to do, the amount of time it's going to take, and if you don't do it yourself, the amount of money you're going to have to spend to get a professional to look at it over for you. You can cut down weeks or months of research into days or hours, and then you can, with certainty for yourself, find out whether or not a property's got development potential by learning the planning system and learning from others. If you want to learn more about the planning process and how you can unlock value out of any property, click the link below to learn more. Maybe you've decided to get into property investing and you've gone on forums about where to start, and then you're seeing all this chat about planning uplift or development potential or got planning, and then as soon as people start talking about planning, there's a whole massive threads and threads and threads of people moaning about the system, how inconsistent it is, can't get hold of an officer, takes 2 years to get planning permission, planning officers went back on the pre-application advice I got, pre-application advice is not worth it, I got refused, appeal is taking so long. Basically, there are a huge number of things wrong with the planning system, but whilst there are many people that are suffering through it and just give up on the whole thing, those are the people on threads, those are the people that are giving up, moaning and just saying I've had enough, and they're just venting on forums. But the people that aren't on forums are the ones that are actually succeeding quietly in the background, the people that understand the complexities, understand the nuances about what it's like inside a council and how to get applications through, to really understand that when you submit an application, you've got a very, very good understanding that you're going to get permission for it. And it's those people that are really benefiting. So for some people, the planning system is completely broken and it's wrong and you can't get anywhere. But for other people, it's a huge opportunity because the barrier to entry is quite high. And that means if you just take the steps to learn the planning system, learn the intricacies, learn what policies to meet, what policies not to meet, understand what's important about maybe a neighbour's amenity or important about a particular use you're proposing, like an HMO or a change of use to office or resi or anything like that. If you understand what's important and what's not important before you submit, you've got a really, really good chance of getting through the planning system. There's other famous examples of people that just have an idea for development. It's my right to develop my property. I can do what I want, and they'll just try and blaze through the planning system. Those are the people that get caught up in appeals. You see them in the papers all the time. Sometimes there's celebrity cases, or there's some people that just go and do whatever they want anyway and don't get planning permission. And then you've got enforcement cases, and there's classic examples of that, of famous buildings being torn down and having to be rebuilt because they were done without planning permission. So it seems very complicated, and if you just look at the wider picture, it is complicated. So it can seem like this big confusing thing, and it can be. If you just look at the big planning system, look at all the complexities, look at all the crazy shouts going on about on forums, it can be confusing. But if you just focus on why certain people are getting permission and why people aren't getting permission, why they're getting refused and going to appeal and getting stuck, just doing that process of understanding what's successful and what's not, you're halfway there. And in there, you'll just to understand why is that successful. And there'll be certain tips within each application. That's the place where not many people look. Why was it refused? Why was it granted? There's a reason for both of those cases. In each one of those, there's evidence for you to take for your site or a neighbouring authority's site or your different type of development, whatever it is. There's clues. Everything's in the public. There's clues everywhere. And step by step, if you just learn the simple things, start building a case, understanding, oh, that worked there, but not there, maybe not there. But the amenity was impacted there and not there. Why? Why is that? And you'll start to build a system. And then you can take that system to a property viewing that you take. So maybe you've got 40 or 50 properties that you're looking at, and the idea of understanding the development potential of each is overwhelming in terms of the amount of work you've got to do, the amount of time it's going to take, and if you don't do it yourself, the amount of money you're going to have to spend to get a professional to look at it over for you. You can cut down weeks or months of research into days or hours, and then you can, with certainty for yourself, find out whether or not a property's got development potential by learning the planning system and learning from others. So whilst you might want to use the planning system when you're considering investing for yourself, there are a lot of strategies that people use within property, and this channel's not about that. It's not about property strategies, it's about planning strategies. But I do know there's a lot of property traders out there, ones that find a site, recognise that there's value, get planning permission for it, sell it on. But what I don't see in a lot of that is that when people find it, they see the beginning and they see the end. There's not much talk about what happens in the middle, and they'll say, oh, I got planning permission for XYZ, all I need to do was XYZ. But the amount of thought and, work and training that goes into that middle bit is huge. It's where all the money is, basically. If you can find a site, recognise that there's development potential and take advantage of it through planning, then you've got a huge skill set that you can either sell that skill set, you can sell that skill set to a developer. Developers are always looking for site finders. You can sell sites with an agreement that you get planning. Once it gets planning permission, you get a commission on it, or you can do it for yourself, or in terms of you can go developing yourself, adding extensions, changes of use, or you can get the whole planning permission process done by yourself and then sell on that planning permission. That's very, very common, because what you'll come to learn if you use that strategy is that people that sell the permissions are ones that are selling it in an ideal way for an investor. Because what that means is, what happens regularly in planning is that once someone has permission for something, it might change hands. That new owner or developer will come in with a slightly amended version. So they'll take the planning permission that you got and they'll say, oh, but we just need a bit more floor space here, we need a tweak here, or it's not quite financially viable, so we need to pull back the scope of development. That's where developers bring in new applications to kind of change it. But if you can get that fundamental piece in place of, I have planning permission for 2, 3, 4 houses, changes of use, whatever it is, that is a huge weight off of developers' minds. If you can just secure the planning permission, if you can buy a site with planning, it is so much more certain for that developer and you'll be handsomely rewarded for it. And don't forget, planning is evolving all the time, so don't think that it's too late to start or it's been around for so long. Planning is an archaic process, that is true. Some things don't change, but some things do. And because it's a political environment, is that the national agenda changes, new policies are adopted. So if you can be the one that is on the forefront of all that and understand what policies are changing and why. So for instance, the classic one right now is that, and it has been for a long time to be fair, is that the country is in dire need of housing. So as an example, permitted development rights have expanded massively because the government are trying to standardise a way for people to build housing, because it's very difficult to do it through planning. Another example is that years ago a permitted development right was introduced to change the use of a pub to a house. After the recession, lots of pubs were shut down, so they were a great kind of layout to allow for residential. So if you could have picked that up and realised that permitted development rights have changed, and you could all of a sudden go looking for pubs all around the country and submit an application and get permitted development for housing and sell that onto a developer, they'll bite your hand off. Now, so PD is changing all the time. There's new things being added all the time. I've done lots of videos on the new things that have come out, things like Part 20, which is flats on top of buildings, on all types of buildings, different types of changes of use. There's also the things you need to keep an eye on are like consultations that are going on. So right now, the government is consulting on expanding certain permitted development rights. And if they do that, come the adoption, the day they adopt, you can take advantage of it. And if you jump on that straight away, you can be the one that goes and gets that PD right, finds a site that no one else is looking at, change its use or add more units or whatever you can do under permitted development rights, and then sell that on. I mean, you'll be taking advantage of stuff that people aren't looking at until 2-3 years down the line. 2-3 years down the line, there'll be a new PD right that comes out and you could take advantage of that. So it's never ending. It's a long-term game, like understanding planning. Once you understand it and understand what changes and why and where to look, then you can be the one that really benefits massively from the planning system, whilst everyone else is turning their back to it because they get so frustrated because they're thinking about, how can I benefit from it in terms of my application? Why is it taking so long? Not understanding. But if you understand what's changing and why, and understand the planning landscape, you can really take advantage. And I would say lastly, is kind of like a bonus point, people don't really think about it much at all. It's a place where a lot of people moan about in terms of the planning system, but that is in terms of the residential community or the neighbours or the residents around the development that you're thinking of developing. it's very easy for people to get frustrated with residents. They shout loudest and they ruin your planning application. But through the point I was mentioning earlier about learning what works well and what doesn't, a huge part of that is what happens during the consultation process and why. And you can, if you for instance search an area, a certain postcode that you're considering developing, have a look at any and all applications in that area and find out what type of local objection generated from that development. Were there local groups that were objecting? Were there no objections? Were there hundreds but they were just individuals? That'll give you a really key insight into what to do, whether you should approach those people, how to approach them, how you should maybe pitch your development in the application process, knowing that those kind of objections are being raised. Because planning is so political, if there are large voices in the community, they get heard. And I've been an officer where cases have been closed down just because a residential community shouted loud enough that it just raised the seed of doubt in the committee member's mind, and it was overturned, which wasn't the right decision. But the point is that big local residential community can massively influence development, and you need to keep a close eye on that, because if you have a whole borough and you've realised that, okay, HMOs in this borough are really good opportunity, but you need to refine your research and get smarter and know, okay, I'm looking at this development, an HMO in this particular area. Have a look at similar developments in that particular area with specific thought about the residential community, because they can make or break your applications, and it's really important to check that. So like I say, you can look at the large scale to look at the development type, and then the smaller scale to look at what that local community is like and how they're going to impact your development, because your development might be fine, but if they shut it down, I mean, you're going to be one of the ones that are spending years through planning. So those are just the few points that are the reasons why you should learn planning and the benefits you can get from it. There are many more, but those are the kind of ones that I wanted to touch on. So, and if you want to learn more about how to learn the planning system and how to unlock the development potential of either your site or a site for someone else, have a look at the link below, and I'll see you on the other side.